Turn this thing off. Hey, welcome everybody to the Do Nothing Project. My name is Jeff, and it is March 7th, 8:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, welcome. Nice to see everybody checking in over in the chat area. Sarah, Wade, Rainbow, Chris, Colleen, Deirdre, Fred, Lauren. Hey, Lauren. Thanks for holding it down in the moderating blue font. Cashew, what's up? Corey, Richard. Hey, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew, for moderating. So if you've never been to the Do Nothing Project before, well, first of all, welcome. Second of all, good to keep the expectations low. We are going to do a practice that's about a whole bunch of nothing, but it's going to have a whole bunch of something right in front of it. Mostly, this is just about the community, place to come together and practice the strange thing called meditation, which can look whatever it wants to look like, whatever you're interested in, you can do in this place. It doesn't matter. My guidance and the guidance of anyone who co-hosts or guest hosts is purely just something to explore if you're interested in, but no need to. Speaking of exploration, so all day on my mind today has been this long-term vision that I've had, this kind of dream. And I just thought, what the fuck? I'm just going to talk about it on the Do Nothing Project. It doesn't matter. And it has to do with the Consciousness Explorers Club, which is the nonprofit. It's a nonprofit that I started about 10 years ago. Eventually, good friends of mine came on board, my friend James and Aaron and Avi and Jude and Tasha and a whole amazing community of people. And the Consciousness Explorers Club was really, it started, back when I started, I wasn't a teacher. I was this was 10 years ago. I was a journalist. I was writing about the mind. I was interested in all the different permutations of consciousness that were out there that no one seemed to talk about. And I wanted to find a way to kind of explore it in real time with my community. So when it started, it was very much a community of, artists and weirdos and writers and filmmakers and doctors and neuroscientists. And you name it. We had a really eclectic group of people that would show up, and I would get in dance instructors and embodiment coaches and voice coaches, and we do kirtan, and we do shamanic ordeals and rituals, and we do tea ceremonies, and people from every tradition modality would come in. And it was just this wonderful, rich place. This was all when I lived in part of Toronto called Kensington Market, which is sort of a downtown neighborhood, got a carny, cracked out vibe. And we had lots of parties as well. And it was those were amazing times. But I've always, around then, I started thinking about this idea of the Consciousness Explorers Club Hotel. So I'm going to just put it out there because it's my 50th birthday coming up in a few days. And this is something I would just love to see happen. And I don't know how it could ever happen. And my idea is sort of to reinvent the retreat center or create something a little different than the traditional retreat center. It would be the hotel in my mind's eye. First of all, CEC had a very kind of fun, kind of neo-Victorian kind of aesthetic. And I've always imagined this old, 1880s Victorian hotel that was kind of falling apart that somehow a philanthropist buys. By the way, Conscious Hotel is not about making money. It's not even for profit. It'd be run by foundations. But it's this rickety old Victorian hotel that has this sort of Western style saloon in the corner and has a big Zendo or meditation space. And there's all these funky rooms that are kind of in various states of disrepair. Of course, it would be livable. I would live there with my family, and my friends would live all around. And we would have these guest residencies where 2 or 3 at a time, different weirdos and healers and artists and practitioners from very different kinds of modalities would meet there, and they would live there for 6 months at a time or for 2 months at a time. and they would offer different offerings. And people could stay there and take part in these offerings, and they'd also be available to the local community. But it would be a really raucous space. Um, it wouldn't have the same. It wouldn't be precious, It wouldn't be. It wouldn't even be about being good for you. Although it would be a place of transformation and healing. It would be edgy too. I mean, there'd be a bar on the corner. There would be dance parties, and of course, once psychedelics get legal in Canada, there would be ceremonies around that, and there would be dream workshops. There would be every kind of possible healing and consciousness professional and amateur could meet there and discuss and explore what it means to be a human being. And much more like a kind of anarchic artist run space than say a typical Buddhist retreat space, which is wonderful but very peaceful. And it's so, Buddhism is soteriological. It's the word. All these contemplative traditions are I am. It wants to save you. It wants to help you. And this is part of it. Like, I do want this place to be a place of insight and transformation and healing for sure. But it makes it kind of boring too. It makes it so eat your vegetables. When I think about how the guided meditation is different than, say, a poem, I think of my poet friends that I know, of which I have a number. They would never be caught dead guiding a meditation. Or if they did, it would be guiding a meditation that was about, orienting to some explicit, confusing conundrum about the human condition or whatever. The guided meditation has this it's much narrower than a song or a poem, because it has a particular thing it's trying to do. It's trying to help you. It's trying to, even has maybe an idea about the sort of experiences that you might have. And that's great. It's wonderful, but it really narrows the field. And so just thinking, like, to open up this idea of the guided practice to be much more like an actual poem or an actual song, and that it's all of human experience it could draw on, and it could take us to places that we wouldn't necessarily expect to go in a traditional retreat setting. And nor would it be like, say, these corporate models that, even though I love, say, something like an Omega or an Echelon, and I've never been to Echelon, but I like these places, and I teach at those places, and I think they're wonderful. They were born in a particular time. They have a particular aesthetic. They have a particular way in which they need to make a certain amount of money to run. And it would be great to have something that didn't have that agenda, that was just, I kind of imagine like a 1950s comic book with big, like, explore consciousness now, and like the mysteries of, it's got this kind of lurid appeal. And you wouldn't also make it so, it wouldn't need to be science based. I love the science, but it's also like, it can be so boring having to always talk about the science or what's going on in the brain. Forget that. It's all about, in a sense, dignifying human experience, saying that what happens in our experience is really what we're interested in here, and anything goes. So I'm excited. I just thought I'd throw it all out there. This is my dream, the Consciousness Explorers Club Hotel. Who knows where it is? But if anyone ever knew about some space that, some old dilapidated retreat center that needed a facelift and a whole bunch of interesting rich philanthropists wanted to join in, I'm not interested in running this thing. I have no brains and no administrative capacity, but I would sure be interested in being part of a team of kind of visionary weirdos to come up with a really interesting curriculum. And I'd like to live there. And I'd like to invite you all. So that's my spiel about the Consciousness Explorers Club Hotel. And by the way, the Consciousness Explorers Club retreats are a little bit like that. We're doing one, hopefully, obviously pandemic depending, but we have a loose plan to do one in August. If you're ever interested in coming up to Canada, we have all these different teachers exploring different practices. We have a dance party. It's always really fun. But that was a whole bunch of words, not really a nothing thing, but a something nothing. I had this idea that I want to guide a simple practice, but before I do, I want to make it complicated. And what I was thinking is, I want to sort of do this thought experiment to sort of prime you all to orienting or to understanding the richness of the different paths that are available to us the moment we begin to set an intention to explore consciousness, to practice, to be, that in a sense, as soon as we close our eyes, of course, you can do it with eyes open too. As soon as we close our eyes, we're sitting at the entrance to a series of trailheads, and it's like these paths that move off in all directions. And there's a path of insight, and there's the path of awareness. There's the path of concentration, the path of loving kindness, the path of developing power, the path of energy, paths of surrender, and of doing nothing itself. And that each of these paths is a little bit different, and they lead us deeper into our lives, into different capacities and sensitivities that many of us have no idea is even there. So I thought I would just start out, even though of all those paths, I'm gonna lead one that's one of the most simple. I wanted to just start by getting us all to maybe close our eyes. If you're interested in doing this, of course, you can totally ignore me, but getting everyone to close their eyes. And I just want to kind of set the stage for the reality of what happens when we stop and we close our eyes and we decide we want to commit to a particular practice, to learning about who we are. That this incredible pluralism of possibilities, of paths that are wending off in the distance. So let's start with this little imaginative exercise. Of course, your eyes can be open if you like, or closed. I thought, each one of these paths involves a slightly different kind of guidance, a different way in which I would build it up. So I'm just gonna point down a few paths from here, and then we'll embark on one. So maybe the first path I'll point to is behind you. It's back towards your own awareness. The person looking, the person observing, the knower. So there's a whole series of paths that are about turning around and getting curious about that. They're not interested in what's coming up in the content of consciousness, not interested in sounds or sensations, but rather just the fact that there's awareness there in the first place. So we can turn around backwards and move in that direction. And sometimes I guide practices that do that a little bit. That's a whole inquiry. Most meditative inquiries, though, don't do that. They move forward. So meaning they move into the material of experience. So for example, there's my voice, which is the sensation of sound. It's emerging for you, that's rising in your consciousness. And one particular path, we'll call it an insight path, a path of mindfulness, certain ways of describing vipassana. That path is interested in zooming in to the subtlest parts of those sounds, or indeed it could be body sensations, really anything. And noticing how they change, noticing how they rise and fall, how there's little gaps, points of silence between each word, moving with increasing clarity into this granular exploration of experience. An entire path there, insights into, they call the three characteristics, the impermanence, suffering, no self, one way into that through this granular exploration of sound or feeling. So that's one way. Or another way is we just turn a little bit off that path. And a different path would be being interested in, say, calming sensations, the sensation of the breath, for example. And being interested in, instead of seeing how they break up, you could say, instead of seeing how they rise and fall, looking for gaps. Instead, we look for smoothness. This path is interested in smoothness and continuity. It's the path of concentration. It's a path of, as you get more and more, it's the path most people take in meditation, actually. As you get more and more interested in the breath, it gets more and more silky. This silky smoothness that we begin to ride. Then eventually there's a shift where we start to, instead of paying attention to the, say, the breath itself, it's more the qualities of comfort and peace and equanimity that are given rise to. And this path is all about stabilizing the mind, creating states of bliss. It leads into what are called the jhanas. And there are many versions of this concentration path, versions with mantras like in TM, versions that involve visualizations, versions that just involve the body. And as we get deeper into that path, there's very interesting things can happen. There's a whole set of claims around as you get deep into these states of absorption, you arrive at these access points where there's more dreamlike phenomena, typical spiritual phenomena that can be explored. But we're not going to go down there, although we'll go down a little bit once I finish this long intro, which is itself not an intro, I guess it's a whole exploration. But we can turn to the right a little bit. Instead of that path, let's look down a different path. This is the long and winding path of energy, power. This is a path of getting curious about where and how in our body we experience energy, particularly interested in the spinal cord, this tensing up your perineum, the very base of the spinal cord is the bottom of this, all the way through the top of the head. The sense of having a center line through us. And that center line, as we get more intentional with our attention, as we get more precision in our focus, more equanimity, it's possible to begin to wake up some of the energies of the body through that column, but indeed through the whole body. And that's a whole path. But we're not going to go down that path. We're going to turn a little bit to the right again and face this other path of loving kindness, one of the many paths of heart, path of deliberately cultivating caring and warmth as a kind of default response in the human nervous system, through imagining different ways in, but imagining people that you love, smiling, stoking that ember. A lot of these paths involve modeling other human beings, actually, teachers, people you know who have particular qualities of heart, particular presence. You kind of imagine you in them in you. So you become the Buddha, you become some goddess of compassion. So there's a whole path, many paths of cultivating these heart qualities. And we'll finish with that. A couple more I just want to touch on. One is this path of embodiment, which really many of the paths lead to. Many of these paths, by the way, they cross over one another. Some of the qualities they cultivate in one get cultivated in others, but there's also this path of embodiment, which you can get from not moving, amazingly. But it has to do with spending more and more time in the body, climbing out of the head, feeling the body from the inside, tracking how energy moves through it as you move, developing an intimacy with what the body knows. And of course, intuition emerges here. And then there's the path we're going to start on right now. I like to call the path of surrender. It's a path of not doing anything. A path of not following any of those paths, which is itself a path. Path of being. So right now, just breathing in, and as you breathe out all the ideas that I just presented. Breathe out all the possibilities. Breathe out the annoyance, the excitement, the frustration, the boredom, whatever's there. Just breathing it out. And as you breathe out, you take an account of what's here. Oh, this body. Oh, this breath. This busy mind or this quiet mind, this face that's flushed, this face that's cool, these fingers that are tingling. What if it was all perfect? Because it is. This is the path of knowing that all the other paths lead here. In this path, we just sit. We sit, we breathe, we try to enjoy the simplicity, the experience. But central to it is the mindset that right now we're where we need to be. What if this breath and this breath, and what if it were sacred? What if you were holy, not needing to be religious about it, being human about it, the perfection of our imperfection? And then just surrendering and surrendering and surrendering. Every objection that arises in the mind, noticing it, breathing out, letting it pass. Every surge of feeling, every contraction, every bracing, noticing them, letting them pass. This is the path of not missing your life, not missing out on it, because it's right here. In this path, it's very permissive. Whenever the mind lands, is fine. The mind just naturally settles on the breath, and that's where it settles. or it settles on just the feeling of the whole body. And you're allowed to have a preference. I also think of this path a lot as a path of enjoyment, enjoying the simple feeling of being a body, having a breath. If you notice yourself trying to control the experience in any way, which is normal, just see if you can let go of that intention and trust whatever's happening. As a general rule, if there's lots of thinking or things are stirred up, then an anchor or home base can help with that, and that's a totally legit way to go. There's the path that's radically okay with not knowing, with confusion. Don't need to know. Just need to be. Can't get that wrong. It's a path of radical humility and getting out of your own way, not pretending you have the answers, you know where to go, or you know who you are, you know any of these things. What if you didn't? What if you let go of all the certainties just for the practice, just for this rare, precious few minutes? What if you let the world show you something that you didn't know? This path is at the beginning and the end of all paths. We end up back here, our life, maybe knowing something different about it. It's also a place where every path begins for each of us individually. When we get quiet, it's where we are reminded of what's important to us. It's where we get interested in this particular practice, this particular thing that we do, that we want to cultivate. Our own practice emerges from here. It won't look like anyone else's. Maybe some family resemblance. Each nervous system is like a lineage in waiting. Not just for ourselves, because we can share it. We share the blessings of the path, the gifts. We can pay it forward. Maybe that's what we'll do now. Thinking about who you want to pay it forward to. Different faces. Could be one person, one animal, one child. Could be someone alive, someone who's passed. Could be an ancestor. It doesn't matter. There's no time and space in this practice of generosity, of paying it forward. Just imagining that you can radiate out whatever it is you want to give. The famous metaphor is Indra's net, a grid, a network. And each intersection is a tiny jewel in the spider's web. And that jewel is you, and it reflects every other jewel all around it. As one jewel lights up, begins to activate all the others. That's the vision of how consciousness raises, how the heart does its work in the world, how liberation happens. The good virus. And we're all part of it. Not even doing it, because it's just doing us. Spreading it out. Casting the seeds. Not in a grandiose way, just a pay it forward way. It's very reasonable. appreciating each of the people that you see, everyone you're connected to through the network. Maybe you say thank you under your breath, or you just think it. For all the gifts coming in and all the gifts going out, for being here at all. And by here, I mean life. The beautiful hardships, all the living. All the mysteries. Thank you. Wade says, really different today, Jeff, but I loved it. Super blissed out. Super different. I did not know I was going to go down that path at all. At all. I had no idea what I was going to do 2 minutes before this thing started. Mm. So if that was your first time at the Do Nothing Project, it's not normally like that. There's no bunch of rambling off the top, and usually a slightly more simpler practice. But I was feeling moved. Maybe it's because I'm aging. Hmm. I mean, if a practice isn't leading you into an appreciation of the crazy, beautiful mystery that's here, then you need to switch up your practice. That's where it all leads. Sometimes quickly, sometimes really slowly. Say I didn't really I feel like I'm only getting it now, 20 years in. But I got it before too, in different ways. But yeah, Joanne's saying interesting is you jacked up your minds with all that info and then channeled it to part where your brain does nothing. Yeah, I was a little worried about getting everybody jacked up like that, but it's just like the human condition. Life jacks you up with all the information, right? You need to learn how to just let it go. Diggy Dave says, appreciated a bit about not knowing and humility helped me chill out on an even deeper level. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, I always have to remind myself that. Then you're like, ah, thanks, Nancy. Christiana's daughter, birthday is the 11th. Nice, Pisces. Dana went to Nowhere Land. Melanie, like an expert bartender mixing drinks without knowing what it'll taste like. Glad it was delicious because it could have been. I remember one time I went to this place called the Dungeon in New Orleans, and this bartender mixed up vodka, rum, whiskey, basically everything, all the bar rail stuff. That didn't taste delicious. Ended up being a terrible night in a good way. That's a different trailhead. So Crystal saying maybe I'll start a CC in my house along with my Laughing Yoga Club. Crystal, please do. Actually, that's a good point for me to mention. I wrote a whole guide to starting up your own version of the CEC wherever you are. It's on the Conscious Explorers Club website, which Andrew can put a link down to. I highly encourage everyone to start a small group of with friends. Just get together with like 3 friends. You can do it virtually until the pandemic is in a different situation. 5 friends, whatever, and just guide each other in simple practices. And it's so healing. It's a place where you can just share what your experiences are, and just the act of sharing and talking, even beyond the practices, is already so helpful. So I've got a whole guide about ways to start that up and what that could look like, and example scripts, and then the whole CC website is meant to be a massive resource for that. It's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of free guided practices that have been up there for years. I mean, at the beginning we didn't record them, but um, anyway, so I'm just giving people a heads up if they're interested in that. Um, thanks, Ben. Likes the do nothing approach. Marie, as a novice, I recently heard there are many layers in meditation. I've been wondering how to get more info on that. Today you addressed it. Yes, those are some layers, and there's many more. Many more. Ben likes freedom to not try. Yeah, okay, so Andrew put down the activation kit. So the CEC is a not-for-profit, so we've never made a cent ever. We've never even figured out how to ask for money, but we do a Patreon campaign, and some people on this chat are generously support us. So that's so we can make things like that. I have a whole idea around. Of course, this Conscious Explorers Club Hotel would be a center for supporting similar, just a small group practice all around the world. That's the other part of the vision I should have mentioned. Anyway, friends. Yeah, that was good times. Oh, there's a CEC club in Berkeley? Excellent, Lauren. You have to let me know what it is. I think we have a map. We're trying to put them on our map, just so people can help find their way to them. So if you want to send a note to me or something, and I'm happy to do that. And if anybody knows any really rich people who are cool, want to make an awesome hotel like that, probably never make any money, but it'll save a lot of people a lot of suffering and make life awesome. Yeah, so people can join if they're interested in seeing the CC in action tomorrow night. I'm not sure what tomorrow night is. I have to look at the who's doing it. Oh, Abby's doing tomorrow. Abby is superb. If you want a brilliant consciousness explorer, Abby is one of the smartest practitioners and teachers I know. He's a super geek. He's off the freaking charts, and he's been down all those paths that I described. And he's into God. I should have mentioned God, the God path, but he does it in a really interesting, very interesting way. Very smart guy. He was getting his PhD in analytical philosophy when it ended up at a meditation retreat and got totally derailed. Anyway, one of my closest friends. So that's tomorrow night. So I will probably be there. I have an appointment actually, but I'll see if I can somehow get on there. Okay, friends, I'm out of here. It's good to hang out with everybody. Thank you for joining Do Nothing Project next week. Don't know what we'll do, but I'll be older, probably not wiser. Very grateful for all of you.